They came from the endless steppe, a ghostly gray horde of horsemen riding faster than the wind, appearing on the horizon like a sudden storm. They created the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen, realm that covered 16% of the planet's land surface. They didn't just conquer lands, they erased civilizations. They burned libraries to the ground and turned flourishing cities into silence. But it all started with one man, not a king, not a god, but a slave, an outcast. A boy who was left to die in the wilderness, who rose to build an army not based on birth, but on blood and loyalty. This is the story of the Mongols. Before the empire, before the terror, there was only the boy. He was born around 1162 AD on the harsh banks of the Anon River. They named him Temujin. According to legend, he came into the world clutching a blood clot in his tiny fist, a sign of destiny, the shaman said, a sign that he was destined to shed blood. But destiny doesn't make life easy. It makes it hard to test the mettle of the man. His father was a tribal chief, a man of respect, until he was poisoned by rivals, the Tatars. Temujin was only 9. Suddenly, he was nothing. His own tribe, the Kiat, abandoned his family, his mother Holin, his brothers, from him the desolate wilderness to die. They stripped the tents and took the livestock. They left them with nothing. For years, they scavenged. They ate rats, marmots, and bitter roots. They fought over scraps. It was here, in the shadow of starvation, that Temujin learned the brutal, unyielding law of the steppe: kill or be killed. There was no room for mercy. Weakness meant death. Temujin survived. He grew up tall, strong, and ruthless. When his own half-brother threatened his authority, Temujin didn't hesitate. He killed him. He shot him with an arrow. He wasn't a noble savage. He was a calculating strategist forged in a chaotic world. He understood that on the steppe, power was the only currency. At this time, the steppe was a shattered mosaic of violence. Hundreds of tribes, the Karat, the Naimans, the Merkits, the Tatars, fought each other endlessly. They spoke the same language. They prayed to the same sky god, Tengri, but they could not unite. They were trapped in cycles of vendetta. Temujin decided he would break the cycle. He changed the rules of the game. He offered a new deal to the weary people of the steppe. He told them, it doesn't matter who your father was. It doesn't matter if you are a prince or a peasant, a blacksmith or a herder. If you are brave, if you are loyal, if you can fight, you can rise. He shattered the old tribal aristocracy. He built an army based on meritocracy, a concept 1,000 years ahead of its time. One by one, he defeated his enemies. But he didn't massacre them all. He absorbed them. He made their warriors his brothers. In 1206, a great council, or Kurultai, was held on the banks of the Anon River. Tens of thousands of tents stretched as far as the eye could see. They lifted him up on a white felt blanket. They gave him a new title, not king, not emperor. They called him Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, the oceanic king. Genghis Khan now had an army of 100,000 loyal devils, but he had a problem. It's a massive problem. How do you command an army that rides 100 miles a day? How do you control an empire the size of a continent without telegraphs or radios? The answer was communication. He created the YAM system. This was a network of relay stations, or YAMs, spaced every 20 to 30 miles across all of Asia. A rider would gallop at full speed to a station, leap onto a fresh horse, and keep going. They could carry a message 200 miles in a single day. A pony express that connected the forests of Siberia to the deserts of China. It was the internet of the 13th century. With the world's fastest communication system and the world's most loyal army, Genghis looked outward. The steppe was too small. The world was waiting. The storm was about to begin. Mongol warfare was terrifyingly simple, yet technologically superior to anything in the West. The key to their domination was the composite bow. It was a marvel of engineering, made of wood, horn, and sinew, glued together with a substance so strong it took years to cure. It had the range of a sniper rifle and the rapid-fire capability of a machine gun. A Mongol warrior carried 60 to 80 arrows into battle. They could hit a target at 300 yards with accuracy that modern archers envied, and they did it while riding at a full gallop. They could shoot forward, backward, and sideways. They were like guided missiles on horseback. But their best tactic wasn't just shooting, it was psychology. It was the Mangudai. They would pretend to run away. A feigned retreat. The enemy, thinking they were winning, would break formation and chase them. The Mongols would lead them into a trap, miles away from their supplies. Then they would turn in their saddles and unleash a hail of arrows. It was a death sentence for anyone who pursued them. The Mongols rarely wanted a fair fight. Fair fights are dangerous. They wanted terror. They sent spies ahead of the army not to fight, but to count the granaries, count the soldiers, and find the cracks in the armor. Then they sent envoys with a single choice: surrender and pay tribute or die. Sometimes they didn't attack at all. They would just ride around the walls, showing off their endless numbers, breaking the morale of the defenders. They waited for the hunger to set in, for the thirst to break their spirit. And if the city resisted, the slaughter was absolute. It was a calculated policy. Men, women, children, none were spared. Sometimes they would build pyramids of heads outside the walls to show the next city what happened when you defied the Khan. Terror was a force multiplier. People think Mongols only fought on open plains. Wrong. They learned quickly. When they met fortified cities in China and Persia, walls that were 50 feet high, they didn't run. They adapted. They hired engineers. They built massive catapults and trebuchets that could crush stone. They used gunpowder bombs, stolen or adapted from the Chinese explosive shells that terrified enemies who had never seen fire fall from the sky. They used boiling oil. They diverted rivers to flood cities, washing away the defenses. They became masters of siegecraft, speed, terror, technology. The Mongol horde was an irresistible force. They turned the wealthy, glittering Silk Road cities of Central Asia into dust. The world had never seen destruction on this scale. The first great Islamic superpower to face the Mongol Storm was the Khwarezmian Empire, covered modern-day Iran, Afghanistan, and Central Asia. The Shah Ala ad-Din Muhammad II was rich, arrogant, and foolish. He ruled over millions of soldiers and vast wealth. Genghis Khan tried to be diplomatic. He wanted trade. He sent a massive caravan of 500 merchants, loaded with gold and gifts. But the governor of a border city, Otrā, seized the goods and killed the merchants. Genghis was furious, but he tried again. He sent ambassadors to demand justice. The Shah shaved their beards and humiliated them. It was the biggest mistake in history. Genghis Khan prayed to the sky god, Tengri, for vengeance. He mobilized 200,000 men, the largest army he had ever led. He didn't just invade. He divided his army into 3 columns and sent them through the deserts, where no army was supposed to survive. They attacked from multiple directions at once. The Shah's armies, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, didn't know where to look. They were paralyzed. One city after another fell: Samarkand, Urgench. But the destruction of Bukhara symbolizes the Mongol wrath. Genghis Khan rode into the Grand Mosque, the holiest place in the city. He looked at the wealthy elites hiding there and told them, "I am the punishment of God." He ordered the treasury emptied, and the city burned. But the worst damage was to the land. The Mongols destroyed the ancient irrigation systems that had sustained agriculture for centuries. They turned the Garden of Central Asia into a desert that is still there today. An estimated 10 to 15 million people died in this campaign. The population of Persia didn't recover for 700 years. It was a demographic catastrophe, a dark scar on the history of humanity. Genghis died in 1227, but the storm didn't stop. His grandsons continued the conquest. Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis, looked west to Baghdad, the center of the Islamic world, the seat of the Caliphate, the jewel of the Abbasid dynasty. In 1258, the Mongols arrived. The Caliph, Al-Mustasim, surrendered, thinking his status as the religious leader would spare him. He was wrong. The Mongols laid waste to Baghdad. They threw the books of the House of Wisdom into the Tigris River. They say the river ran black with ink for days. The center of intellectual gravity in the world shifted. The Islamic Golden Age centuries of math, medicine, and astronomy was effectively murdered by the Mongol sword. It was a loss from which human civilization arguably never fully recovered. By this point, the Mongol Empire was too big, stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. It spanned too many religions, too many languages, too many landscapes. Even the Yam system, the great communication network, was stretched to the breaking point. Genghis Khan had divided his empire among his 4 sons before he died. But after his death, the family bonds began to fray. Cousins fought cousins. The civil wars between the Khansburg, Hulagu, Kublai, Arik, Bok were just as bloody as their wars against others. The unity that had made them strong was gone. In the east, Kublai Khan completed the conquest of China. He became the emperor of the Yuan dynasty. But in becoming Chinese, the Mongols changed. They settled down. They built palaces of marble and gold. They wore silk robes. They stopped riding. They stopped hunting. They lost the edge of the steppe. The hardiness that made them conquerors was softened by luxury. The Chinese people viewed them as foreign occupiers. The administration became corrupt. The paper money system, once a marvel, collapsed into hyperinflation, and then the weather turned against them. Climate records show the Mongol period was unusually warm, allowing grass to grow thick and feed millions of horses. Then, the Little Ice Age began. The steppe dried up. The winters became brutal. The horses starved. The Mongol war machine was built on the backs of their horses. No grass, no horses, no empire. The Mongol overlords were eventually pushed out of China by the Ming dynasty. In Russia, the Golden Horde was absorbed. The empire vanished as quickly as it appeared, like a dream of thunder. But the world changed forever. The Mongols destroyed the old order of feudalism. They reopened the Silk Road under the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace. For a brief, shining moment, you could travel from Venice to Beijing in safety. Marco Polo was only able to travel because of the Mongols. Ideas traveled. Gunpowder, paper money, the compass, the printing press, everything traveled through their empire. Even the Black Death traveled the Mongol trade routes, reshaping the population of Europe. They connected East and West in a way that hadn't been done before, and wouldn't be done again until the modern internet. Genghis Khan is remembered as a monster, a butcher. And in terms of human life, he was. He killed millions. But he was also a unifier. 8% of the men in Central Asia today carry his Y chromosome. He is quite literally the father of a nation. He proved that the world was small, that with speed, loyalty, and terror, a small group of people can turn the world upside down. The Mongol Storm eventually broke. The thunder faded into silence. But the echoes of that thunder can still be heard today.